My little brother Quady Boy's dream is Barlanyu's vision. After being bullied to the point of wanting to end his life.
So I've just picked my son up from school, witnessed a bullying episode, rang the principal, and I want people to know, parents, educators, teachers, this is the effect that bullying has. This is what bullying does.
And after Mum's heartfelt plea to try and bring attention to the effect bullying has had on Quaden's life.
And I wish that I could record every instant when we're in public or have a hidden camera so that people could see. And this is the side that I don't choose to share. I choose to keep this private.
This is a beautiful boy. What's happened to you if those people have that same process and went through with that? How they feel it? How stupid these people are.
Quaden was then unfairly attacked publicly on social media. This resulted in US actor Brad Williams to raise funds for Quaden to visit Disneyland. But Quaden didn't want to go to Disneyland. So the money that was raised was then donated to 3 charities, Barlanyue being one of the charities. When we asked Quaden if he had one wish, where would he go? He told us he wanted to take his family out to visit his Yolngu family and get cultural healing. The Barlanyue and Gary Durke Foundation partnered up to bring you Quaden's dream.
Come back, see Jolly. Go to see Jolly.
Come see Jolly.
Come see him.
Go next to him, bro.
Come up to him.
Go up to Jolly.
20 memory. Very high. Understand? I can see right. Like picture.
Just a remarkable story, isn't it, folks? Good evening. Welcome along to the Voice of Freedom tonight. And that story alone is just one of a number that I've been sent today that I've had a time to have a look at. And they've been put together through a foundation called the Barlanyue Group. and the man that has headed up that group still heads that group up. And you may have heard me talk about him previously, may have even heard me say I would never have him on here. Well, I don't know, pigs must be flying, the moon must be pink or blue, or maybe it's not the moon. But I can tell you that I've had some very, very good conversations with this gentleman over the last couple of weeks, and I am honoured to have him on my program. David Cole, good evening. Thank you for joining me from the Northern Territory, mate.
Yeah, good to talk to you, brother. How are you?
Mate, I'm moved. That story, that healing story for young Quaden, that's a couple of years old now. I remember when that happened, there was a modicum of mainstream media coverage, more about the bullying than anything else. That healing ceremony that you were significant in organising, maybe you can just give a little bit of a background and maybe an update on Quaden's situation right now before we continue on to our other topics of the night.
Yeah, Quady boy is powering. He's a little warrior, and he's powering through life. He's doing great things. He's involved in some movies and other stuff. He's got too much going on. I can't even keep up with him. I talk to Mum every now and then, and she updates me. But yeah, he's doing really well, brother. He's and that trip was significant for him. We should point out money raised.
A pretty famous actor, a pretty famous American actor, came to the party and wanted to bring him to Disneyland and show him a great time, and he didn't want any of that, did he?
No, he didn't. And what his mum did was the money that was raised by that actor, his mother broke it up into 3 charities and donated it to charities. And because we weren't running our healing camps at the time, I didn't want to use Quaden's money to heal kids that government were responsible for assisting us with. I wanted it to go to something special that could assist him with his healing. So I asked Mum, I said, what is it that Quaden wants? And she said he just wants to go out to his Yulnal family, the Yulnal Nation, which is Northeast Arnhem Land, and he just wants to get healing with his Yulnal people and family, and that's all he wants. I said, well, how about we put a trip together and take you and the family and him out there and give you all some healing out there, and that's how that eventuated. So we took him out there, and he got to meet with my late father, who just passed away last year. You saw him on there playing the yidaki, and that's the great Mr. Guru, where the yidaki on the $1 coin is actually from my father. He's the yidaki master, the yidaki healer, and he's healed. Prince Charles flew all the way to Nhulunbuy to get a 20-minute healing from him during the 2018 Commonwealth Games. Wow. That's how powerful he is, and he's healing. So we got Quady out there to meet with my father, who adopted me, and it was a special meeting. And in there, he talks about Quady having an old memory, coming from the old time and being of a higher level, and they connected, and it was beautiful. So that gave Quady and the family the healing time that they needed out on country, immersing themselves in the richness of our culture and healing on the land. So it was a beautiful, powerful journey, brother.
I think that's something we could all do with, Dave. We could all do with the healing. Unfortunately, there seems to be a divide between black and white Australia. I'm not gonna tiptoe around it. There are probably good arguments on both sides of why there is a divide. We're not here to talk about the arguments. We're not here to have an argument. We're here to try and find a way to bring both, not sides. We are the same people.
That's right.
We seem to be struggling to find the path that unifies us all, Dave. So clearly, Balanu, a charity set up to take youth off the streets and give them a focus on country, give them some sort of cultural identity. This is something that Australians need as well, in my opinion, like white Australians, I beg your pardon. And I know that that's something that you would like to be involved, or you are involved in trying to push forward.
Well,
what can we do in that regard?
That's what we're doing with. We've started up a tour because government cut 100% of our funding to our foundation and our programs, even though their evaluations and the University of New South Wales evaluation proves that the program saves lives, stops kids suiciding, stops them reoffending, keeps them out of prison, re-engages them in school with family, reduces their substance abuse, self-harm. The evaluations both found the same findings. The Royal Commission found that Ballinu Foundation was the only shining light in their entire investigation, and that was a $70 million investigation. And so we were the only shining light in their investigation. And since that investigation, they spent $380 million on a prison and nothing on our healing retreat. I'm actually out here at our healing retreat now. That's a view that over 850 kids have sat with, brother, over the last 17 years. We bring them out here, and this is where we heal a lot of the kids out on this beautiful healing place. But I'm out here cleaning it out and getting out. We have to hand it back. They're kicking us out. They've cut all our funding because I've been exposing children being abused in the system, both in child protection and from police over the years. And the learning years later, they call that a whistleblower. So they cut all our funding. Instead of supporting something that's helping kids, they've cut our funding. So we started up a tour called Langarama. Langarama is a cultural immersion experience that we're running up here. We're going to be running bigger, longer trips in the dry season. In June, we got April, May short camps up in Darwin, but then we'll be cruising from Darwin down to Nooka. Now, Langarama is a cultural immersion experience, and it gives people, non-tribal people, an opportunity to come out and connect with the culture, sit down with tribal people, ask questions they want to ask, find out knowledge that they've never known, find the connection, and see the similarities, not only in who we are as human beings, but see the similarities in who we are as human beings to the planet. Because my Scottish and Irish side in me have the privilege that I also have Aboriginal blood, and my Aboriginal blood and my connection to land and culture and my ability to go and learn all that and connect with it is actually my closest reminder to what my Scottish and Irish ancestors once were, brother, which was living on the land, in harmony with the land, holding law, holding ceremony. The only difference between black and white and every other religion and every other culture and race is my Scottish and Irish ancestors have been a couple of thousand years removed from that absolute spiritual connection to the land, and my Aboriginal culture is 233 years interrupted, still alive, still connected. So Langarama is an opportunity for non-tribal people of this continent to come out and meet tribal people from this land, connect with the culture, understand the deep spirituality that we have, not only to each other, but to the land. But in that process, what you will find when you come on this journey is you'll reconnect with your DNA through our land, through our medicine, through our ancestors. Here, you'll reconnect with that back to Scotland, Ireland, England, wherever you're from. Because at the end of the day, when people start to learn about our culture and realize that our song lines aren't just mythical songs, they're actually songs that tell a story of the land, the trees, the water, the wind, the seasons. Every plant, every animal, everything has a song, has a dance, has a ceremony, has a meaning. Now, that connection is also goes across the earth. My father sung the water tunnels and the waterways for the entire planet. He told me before he died, he said, you must hurry up and unite the black and white. You must unite all the Yolngu, all the black fellas together. He said, then you must unite the black fellas with the white fellas to protect the water, the gupul. Because when we protect the gupul, we protect the planet. And when we protect the gupul, we protect the future generations. The water holds our DNA. The water is our essence of life. And his instructions to me was to unite everybody to protect the land, to protect the water, to protect the children, and to unite us all to build a prosperous future, walking together forward. And I still walk that honor, even though he's passed. I walk in honor of his wishes, because his wishes were my desire when I met him, which was to bring us all together to walk in unison. And I once read that a country is not a nation until its people are walking in unison. And we've never been walking in unison. And it's time that we do that. We have an opportunity, we have a need, and all we need is a common dream, my brother. And the race, the color, the religion, the belief systems, all of that's irrelevant when we all need to eat good food, drink good water, and breathe good air. If we have a common dream, we can bring it together And through the sovereign tribal people of these lands, we have the strongest lawful standing to create the new and invite everybody to step with us. We don't have to fight this corporate beast. We have the right and the ability to create the new, and that's what we're trying to do. So Langurama is that opportunity for people to come on a cultural immersion experience, which we've got one starting next week. We have another one in May, and then we have a big one in June that's going from Latakia country in Darwin out to Nooka, which is 650 k's into Arnhem Land. Now that's a special experience, that one, because we're actually going to a very sacred land that it required 8 clan groups to meet and discuss whether Langurama could take non-tribal people into those sacred places. So it took 8 clan groups had to sit down and negotiate and discuss it all and come to an agreement that we could take non-tribal people into ancient areas that other tribal people on this continent don't go to. I can't go there. If I go in there now uninvited, unspoken for, I would get speared, or I'd get punished, and I'd get driven out of there. So this is places that tribal people can't go, but anybody who comes on the journey is going to get the experience of going out to amazing places in Nooka, which is going to be places that have been untouched for centuries, and places that hold ancient stories, fish traps, burial sites, and everything, sacred places. It's going to be an amazing journey. So that's what we're doing with Langurama now. Langurama doesn't see a profit yet. It's only early days on the immersion tours. But the reason we're running Langurama is we're running it through the foundation. So when you come on Langurama, not only are you going to get healing and connect to our culture and connect to the land, but when it does start to make a profit, the profits will be put into programs in the areas that we run Langurama, and the elders will decide what healing projects they want to see in their community for the children and the people. And the profits from the Langurama journey will go into funding the healing programs ourselves without government involvement. So the more people that get behind Langurama around the country, the greater we can grow the healing. And we want to sustain our foundation without government involvement or interruption, because it works. The program works. They've cut 100% of our funding because I've spoken publicly. They're now kicking us out of this beautiful healing space. So we're back to square one. But what we have is the culture. We have the knowledge. We have the track record. We know how to heal our children and heal the people. Ballinyu at its height from 2005 to 2014 pretty much emptied Don Dale Centre, and we were never funded more than 15% of what we needed. So it's the chief minister
Don Dale Centre is the youth prison up there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's the youth detention centre. So at the height of our program, judges weren't sending kids to Don Dale. They were sending them out to us. And the reason being is the CEO for Aboriginal Legal Aid was asked by the Chief Minister, Michael Gunner, at the time, what her opinion was of the Ballinyu Foundation. And she said, I'm not going to give you my opinion. I'll give you my legal team's opinion. And she told him that the legal team stated that when kids go to Ballinyu, they don't see them back in court. So not only were we stopping kids from suiciding, but we were turning them around and stopping them from reoffending and getting their life on track. And we did that with on an oily rag, with just a lot of love and effort. And we've never been funded properly to do it properly. So they've not only cut out what little funding we've had, but they've stopped us delivering programs altogether. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a corporation that tells the white Australians, we give the blackfellas $33 billion. But they don't tell you that programs that save kids' lives, turn kids around and keep them out of prison, are not being funded, and they're spending that money on a $80 million prison. And at the same time, they're marketing to the Australian people how rotten our kids are on the streets in Alice Springs. Now, that's all been socially engineered. So I've had the solution for years, brother. It's been working. Government's evaluation, University of New South Wales evaluation says that it works. And yet we've had all our funding cut. So that's what led me to the fight in the early days when I had to work out what I was dealing with. And that's when I realized we're dealing with a corporation that's willing to kill our children. And I've been fighting them on my own through the ICC, publicly and internationally, since 2014 on my own, challenging them on the rights of the children. So that's why I've been in this fight for a long time. And it's been well before all this pandemic stuff kicked in. Through doing my hard research, I realized what was coming. So that's why I went public for the Australian people, to try and protect other people's families. And
Well, I'd
last
like
thing
to,
I want to do is be talking out the front.
Yeah, well, look, I want to apologise to you publicly, because I've said on a couple of occasions that I was very dubious about you and anything you were doing, because you were talking a lot to the UN and whatnot. But with further conversations between us, I've come to understand that you're merely trying to find a way to get a result for all of us, but particularly in your circumstance, to get some funding together to help the kids, and that's everything I am about. I want to help every which way. Now, you really came to my attention at a time where there was a little girl went missing in the Northern Territory, and there was a panicked video sent out by a guy who was hidden in the back of a van somewhere, saying the police were chasing him. That's a horrendous situation, but it is almost a daily situation in the Northern Territory. Is that a fair statement?
No, it's not a daily situation. That's a unique situation. That young girl, and the evidence I've seen indicates that not only should those children be removed and left with the mother, but there's a high level cover up going on there. I've been in the youth working game for 25 years, 30 years, brother. I've watched all the cover-ups, complaints I've made over the years. I see how they work. I see how they move, and I've never seen a cover-up like this in my life. They sent, I would say, in excess of 400 agents would have been assigned to recover that girl, and this is all going into high-level child abuse in the system, and it was a massive cover-up. Every single department, every level. When the Minister for Family and Children's states in a statement that she's been advised not to interfere, then who's telling the Minister for Family and Children's not to interfere? This is filthy. It runs all the way to the top, brother. I'm in this for the children. And everyone knows it. They want me gone. They want me knocked off. They want me silenced, because they know I'm exposing the one thing that this country and the filth that's running this corporation is involved in, and that's the child trafficking, the child abuse, and the child abduction and murder. Now, this little girl, there was no abduction from the mother. The mother was protected by another woman who was charged for abduction. So there was no abduction. They removed that child from a violent situation at a visitation, in which the child and the supporting woman were assaulted by the father, and they removed the child from that situation, and they were hunted down and charged for abduction. So a mother cannot abduct her own child. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. I'm in this for the pedophilia to be stopped. I'm in this for I don't even like to say that. That means child lover. These are child abusers. These are child murderers. These are child traffickers. And that's why I'm in this fight, brother. And if people want to know what I'm really about, then look at what I've been doing for the last 25 years. I've been working with kids who have been abused, been through trauma, and I'm not talking publicly for any other reason than to protect the children. And it puts everything on the line for me, my family. They've come after my family they beat my kids in public, charged us all for assault. The police haven't been charged for assaulting my children. They just it's a cowboy location up here, brother. It's one of the last strongholds for the Crown. The Crown has vacated this land, but they still hold on through here and through South Australia. So this is a very, very critical location for the globalists. Around the corner from me, only about 15 k's, 25% of Elon Musk's lithium batteries been mined out of this land here. But the Latakia people haven't been fully consulted, and all the families haven't been consulted, nor are they sharing in any of what's been taken from there, and they haven't been asked if their land. So the Northern Territory has already been sold off. The Australian continent has already been sold off. We have one chance to save it as Australian people and tribal people together, and all that's required is for us to have a common goal, see a common dream, and work together. We've got a roadmap on how we can do that and how we can walk together in unison. And together we can create the new.
Does that roadmap involve the voice at all? I can't see that the voice is anything good.
No, brother, the voice. I'll tell you what the voice is. The voice is a corporate contract. They're desperate to get in place because they know that the gig's up. They know that they're running out of time. And there's two continents that the globalists want to suck off. That's Africa and here. The Africans are waking up real quick, and they're still there, but they're getting pushed out real quick. This is their continent to come and suck the rest of the wealth off to maintain their globalist agenda and do what they're doing. We have a chance to cut them. The voice is a corporate contract between a corporation and tribal people. And this is why the Australian people shouldn't vote in this. Don't vote. And the reason being is this: we can't vote for white Australia to come and be a part of our tribes, right? I can't vote and make Carl a part of my society, can I?
No.
Not without your consent or your choice,
not without
your
my
desire,
consent,
or your desire to. That's right. Now the tribal people haven't been consulted. I've sent out a couple of videos. I'll send you those videos to put up after this we talk. They've not been consulted. I've videoed and interviewed and documented my senior elders in remote regions across the desert, and none of them have even heard about voice, heard about treaty. Now, why they're doing this is this: you got Albanese up there crying with all these black puppets, and I'll tell you why. They're crying because they need a voice. If they don't get a voice, the Vatican is just, on the 30th of March, the Vatican just repudiated the doctrine of discovery. Now, the doctrine of discovery was a law passed by the Vatican that they owned every being, every spirit, every animal, every river, every tree, every land across the planet, and they could colonize and spread their religion. So what they did was they gave the English a thing called the Papal Bull. The Papal Bull was their permission to come here and colonize. Now, the Vatican has just repudiated the doctrine of discovery on the 30th of March. And in their public statement, they've asked all governments to assist with the repatriation, meaning help us hand it back to the tribal people and repatriate from the damages that we've caused. Now, that's a good thing for all of us. What does that mean? Let me tell every Australian person out there. The tribal people have no interest in kicking you out of your home. They have no interest in kicking you out of the country. We have no interest in harming or causing any injury, harm, or loss in any form. Rather, it's the contrary. We want to free everyone's debt up from these corporate debts that have been put on people fraudulently. We want to see people work together to create our own governance, our own financial systems, our own institutions where we look after each other, and we're all owners in going forward. All right, all of us together. There is no we own it all, you own nothing, you sit in poverty, right? Because we've been in that poverty for 233 years, and I could take you through a community, and you'd cry, brother. If I took you through one of our communities in 2023, you would cry. And when you can see that $1 billion that was allocated for housing has been spent on a wave pool, and our people are living in overcrowded housing, and they're living on dry biscuits on an average night in most communities, and the food is toxic, the water's toxic, the housing's toxic. Our people are still being genocide in 2023 by a systematic system. And I could take you on that journey every day of the week and wake your eyes up. But here's what we need. We need for the rest of the Australian people to realise that the sovereign tribal people have the strongest standing, because it all comes down to doing it peacefully, it all comes down to doing it lawfully, and it comes down to doing it honourably. And I've looked at this from a black and white side for 15 years, brother. I don't see colour. I just see right and wrong. So I've only ever looked at this from a solutions-based perspective, through common law, through natural law, through statute law, through tribal law, through every law that exists. I've looked at what is the solution for us. And here's the reality. The tribal people have the right under international law to establish our own governance structure, our own commerce and trade, our own governing our own affairs, and we have the right to invite anybody on this continent to come and be a part of us and walk with us. Okay, that doesn't mean that you have to come under our society and live every day within our rules. We are grown enough, we're big enough, and we're smart enough to be able to work together to create. People have been talking about, Darren from, the My Place councils, right? So the My Place councils across the country, working with the tribal councils, establishing social compact agreements, is all that's required for us to walk together. And all we need is a common dream. And I'll ask you 3 simple questions, brother. I've already brought it up, but let me ask this. Would you like to live free of tyranny?
Yes.
Would you like to live under a governance structure that you and the people are in control of?
Yes.
Would you like your children to have good water, good food, and good air into the future, and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Yes.
So let's just settle on those 5 points, and let's just agree that me and Carl have just come to a common dream, right? And within that common dream, if we make the steps to walk towards that common dream, then we have a social compact agreement. When you have a social compact agreement, then you then have a society. So we have the right to create our own governance and our own direction and move in a healthy direction. And we have the right to invite our brothers and sisters on this continent to come and join us.
Mm.
And that can be done through local councils, regional councils, and national councils. That can be done through private members associations that enter into social compact agreements, and then we have something to work with them and a way to go forward. So all I've ever been looking at is, where's our strongest lawful standing to do this peacefully? You know, the greatest victory are the ones in which blood is not shed. And if we do anything outside of what's honour and what's lawful, then we subject ourselves to be punished for multiple reasons they can make up. But if we do it peacefully and honourably, and within the lawful standing that we have the right to stand within, then we can't be stopped. All we need is a common dream. All we need is to agree that Carl would like to go this way and I'd like to go that way. How are we going to do it? So for me, brother, the repudiating of the doctrine of discovery means that they need to prepare to hand the lands back. Not just here; this is planetary. And now in 2017, the Pope said publicly, the only hope for the planet is indigenous sovereignty. And the reason he said that is because the tribes are the only people on the planet that have the right to push back against these corporate contracts. And the tribal people on this land, we're the last one without a treaty, no contract, no agreement. They tried recognition. We killed that. They spent over 100 million on that. They took 500 million from Aboriginal Health and put that into recognition. They're now putting all that into the voice and a treaty. Now, what that means is, if white Australia votes to include us in, well, you've just sold yourself out too, as well as you've fraudulently voted us into something we don't want to be a part of. Now, for the tribal people that are saying yes to it, all right, they're selling their people out, because it's a contract with a corporation that is desperate not to hand it back as required by the doctrine of discovery being revoked. Their fear is to lose control of the stealing of the wealth, and they've shown through this scamdemic that they don't care about the health of the people, so they're happy to be left with a population that can mine and do all their dirty work for them into the future. And we will all lose out. The tribes will lose out. White Australia will lose out. Every other culture and race here will lose out. This is a trick. Anytime, now you got to remember this, brother. The government's never done anything that helps heal and fix tribal people. And why? Because I've been running a healing program for 25 years. And I'll give you this statistic. 85% of the kids, I brought out 850 kids right here. 850 kids have sat on this beach. 850 kids have come out to this campsite. And out of those 850 kids, 85% of them had attempted suicide or had suicide ideology at the time that I met them. And I've been to 2 funerals in 17 years.
Wow.
And
that's a great
that's right. And at the time of those success stories, we had the highest youth suicide rates per capita in the world in Darwin, because we had the highest stolen generation population that migrated to Darwin after the war and after they stopped started closing down the missions. So that intergenerational trauma is what I've been dealing with for the last 17 years out here at this healing camp. Now, we know we can not only heal our children. I brought non-tribal kids out here, brother, and it's healed them the same, eh? It doesn't. See, for me, suffering don't see color. The reason I'm targeting our kids through culture is because we're 100% of the juvenile detention center. We're 95% of the adult prison population. We're 85% of the child protection, and we're only 36% of the population in the territory. We're 3% of the population nationally, and we're nearly 30% of the prison population nationally. So we
Right.
lead the way. We lead the rates in suicide, in early deaths. We were dying 10 years earlier, crept up to 12, 14, 16. Now we're dying 20 years earlier than other Australians because of the poor health. So that's
So
why I call it systematic genocide.
we have to talk about. I want to get into talk about Alice Springs and Darwin. I want to talk about what's happening on the streets there, and at least the perception that the rest of the country is being given. But I think before I can get to there, we've got to touch on the alcohol problem in the communities. We can only do so much as a nation. We can't, lock people down. Well, I suppose in some communities they are locked down. They're not allowed to take alcohol in there, but it doesn't stop them going out and getting it. Alcohol does seem to be the biggest destroyer of the relationship between white and black Australia at the moment. How do we bridge that gap?
Well. You got problem, cause, effect, right? The alcohol is the effect. The problem is we've got 233 years of trauma that we've never been able to address. So in 2011-12, $25.4 billion spent on 2.6% of the population to achieve negative outcomes in every facet of our social suffering and lives. In 2013-14, that increased to $30.3 billion for 2.8% of the population to achieve negative outcomes. 2015-16, $33 billion on just under 3% of the population to achieve negative outcomes. So they created a multi-billion-dollar industry off our suffering, but the services and the programs never reached the community. In the 2013-14-15 budget of $30.3 billion, less than 1.5 actually reached the cold front, and that was chewed up by government, corporation, private enterprise. So by the time you get down to programs like mine and now the community-based programs that actually work, there's no money for us. Right, so they create an illusion of a multi-bill. They tell the rest of the country, well, we give the blackfellas $33 billion. So you get pissed off and you go, what? They get all these handouts and we get nothing and we're struggling. Everyone's got to remember on this country that this whole country's wealth has been derived off stolen resources from tribal lands. 85% of the world's gold comes out of one tribal land in WA alone. So we're not seeing that wealth. We're not seeing that return. We're not seeing the resources that have been stolen out of our land coming back into healing our people. So we have overcrowded housing. We need in excess of 100,000 houses across the country. So imagine this. Imagine an average house in northeast Arnhem Land with an average of 12 to 17 people living in it.
Wow.
In a 3-bedroom house. Now imagine the food scarcity. Then take into account the poor living standards. Then take into account the poor housing, the poor schooling, the toxic food, and imagine everyone, the stress that creates in that sort of environment. So to flee that stress, a lot of those people will come into town. When they come into town, they got nowhere to sleep, so they're on the street. Okay, and a lot of people will come into town, and alcohol. Arthur Phillip wrote in his diary over 200 years ago, we gave Aboriginals alcohol and they spat it out because it wasn't good for their body. But they realized over time, if they kept drinking it, it would help numb the effect of us stealing their land, killing them, and destroying their culture. Now, 233 years later, our people are still self-medicating to deal with the trauma. Now, everyone keeps going, oh, alcohol's the problem. Alcohol's not the problem. That's the reactive part of it. The problem is we've got 233 years of intergenerational trauma, right?
Yep.
We got trauma. People go, oh, yeah, but that's in the past. Well, hang on. I sat with my grandmother who told me the story when she was snatched out of a tree at gunpoint and dragged into a police car and taken away by gunpoint while all the men were out mustering. And her and her siblings all got forced into missions, and all the children went through all forms of abuse and torture and all sorts of stuff. Plus, they couldn't speak their language, or they got it beaten out of them if they spoke culture. That was my grandmother. That wasn't some mythical story that someone told me. That's in her writings, that's in her stories, that's in everything. So we still have intergenerational trauma on a level from, for example, Kumanjay Walker, when he was murdered in Yuendamu. That triggered the Coniston massacre. And that was only 2 or 3 days, 100 years to the day of the Coniston massacre. So that re-traumatized all the trauma in all the community and the elders. And then the Alice Springs City Council went and put up a statute of the military guy who led the Coniston massacre and murdered all the women, children, and men. So all of that trauma. The point I'm making here, brother, is all that trauma leads to the alcohol, leads to the
Yes.
substance abuse,
Yep.
leads to dealing with the trauma, and we can't deal with the alcohol until we deal with the trauma. And I made a vow to the children that I won't get involved in politics and all that bullshit. And I set out to do this 25 years ago. And I set up a program that didn't talk, it walked. And it got outcomes and it achieved it. And we've had all our money cut. And we're not being funded, even though their evaluation says it saves kids' lives. That's the neglect that this country has put on tribal people to condition us into the suffering we're in, to result in us, too many of our people turning to substance abuse to escape the reality of our dim existence and our suffering. And that's the cycle.
Where are the likes of Gina Reinhardt and Twiggy Forrest? Big miners in this country, big loaners. In fact, I think late last year, Gina gave away $1 million, 100,000 to 10 of her employees each. $100,000 would go a long way to get your program refunded. And she may even have a corner on a bit of land somewhere. They're not digging a bloody great hole in at the moment, that you could hold this, hold these sorts of healing weekends or weeks, as whichever it turns out to be. What response do you get from the big miners in this country when, or have you even gone to them to say, hey, listen, the government screwed me. Can you help?
Yeah, look, we've written to all of them over the years, and they basically put it back to it's a government responsibility. Government will say, well, it's not all our responsibility. You need to get philanthropic and corporate. And the sad reality on that is, brother, the resources that have been taken out of tribal lands, we could heal the tribal people across this country 100 times over if the resources that were supposedly allocated for us actually reached us. And that's a responsibility of this nation. You know, it's not like tribal people aren't trying. Programs like mine and many others have not only succeeded, but they've achieved amazing outcomes beyond what government's currently doing. Yet we don't see the funding, we don't see the resources. They've created an industry off us while we keep dying. At the same time, are raping trillions out of the land, which are going to the globalists and not back to the Australian people or the tribal people who own that resource. So, you know, Twiggy Forrester, Gina Reinhardt, these people, they owe it to the tribal people to contribute back because that's where they're making their money, and they're making a lot more money than they're given. So, you know,
and every cent they gave you is tax deductible. So,
well, that's right. Right, yeah, we're a public benevolent institution, and everything's tax deductible, and we welcome support from the miners, from anybody, not just anybody who's generating wealth off this continent, can contribute back to healing the people who own the land, and helping us. That's real reconciliation. All this division, all this conflict, the sensationalism of what's going on in Alice Springs, it's been like that for a long time, bro. The government just picks
tell us
and chooses
about Alice Springs. Tell us about, you know, you're calling it sensationalism. We've seen the Prime Minister there. We've seen the Leader of the Opposition there. We've seen Jacinta Price, who is a native from there, so to speak, grew up in Alice Springs, now a senator. In fact, last night she released something on the Fair Australia website, fairaustralia.com.au. The link is in the description for the program, folks, if you want to go and have a look at it. It's not very long, maybe half an hour. And I've got to say, an extremely interesting video I watched. I learned a lot about her and a lot about her motivations, about what she's looking to try and do in the territory and for our nation at the moment. Of course, she's on the no side of the vote as well. What has been your experience of her? What are your thoughts? Do we trust a politician regardless of colour or creed?
Yeah, look, I don't trust any politician, no matter what breed they are. They're all controlled corporate agents who will do what their masters tell them to do. I agree with some things Jacinta said in relation to protecting women and children and community. 100% agree on that. That's about where it stops for me. I don't. We both disagree on the voice for different reasons. I disagree for the fact that they're entering us into a contract, and we're all in a lot of strife if that happens. She's coming more from the angle of, well, why should tribal people have their own voice? because we've never had a voice in there anyway. So we have different opinions. Look, Alice Springs has always been a war zone, you know, and not just, you know, the Australian people. Motherfucker.
Don't go and get eaten by a bloody crocodile. I keep looking in the background there for you. Oh, might have dropped out. That happens occasionally. It is the territory after all, folks. I'll pull him out and see whether or not we can get him to come back on. Bit of a pity he's pulled up right where he has. Let me just have a bit of a scan through some of your questions, queries, and statements tonight, folks. Thank you, Paul. Apparently, Paul, you need to send me an email. Apparently, you know something about boats. Carl@vofhq.com, mate. Send me an email. What else was I going to say about boats? Oh, I saw the old pirate yesterday. We had a good chat last night, of course, and we've had another conversation today. Hopefully we will be able to bring you up to date with a little plan that we're hatching in the background in the near future. So that could be a bit of fun. And John is very keen to come out and see as many people as he can over the next 12 months or so. So we're going to try and take him on the road with us as often as possible. That'll be the way we do it. So it looks like Dave's actually dropped out and had a bit of an issue there. So I hope he can reconnect, but he may not be able to. I don't have the Langorama contact details just yet. He was going to give them to me, and I was just going to write them down and put them up. But I will get a hold of those details. And if you are interested in taking this Langorama course, particularly the one that's happening in June, I've got a lot of things happening in June. It may or may not be possible for me to be part of it, but David has suggested that the Voice of Freedom would be very welcome, and we might be able to take along our Starlink, which should give us some internet connection, and we would be able to conduct shows while we're on the road. So from these extremely remote places, we would need to get permission to do that, and that's something that we were going to talk about and move forward with. So fingers crossed that will come good, and there might be something going on in June for that. But if you are interested in going on Langorama, then please email me, carl@vofhq.com, and I'll make sure that Lumpa gets everything, all your details, and he can be in contact to sort it out. I personally believe it would be one of the most fulfilling things to do in my life. I have had conversations with many elders around this country. I, in fact, drove to Sydney to go and speak to Auntie Glenda because there was so much about Aboriginal culture that I do not understand. I still don't understand, and I am embarrassed to admit that. I think there are many Australians that feel the same way. We don't understand our culture, our Aboriginal side culture. And we have been presented the distasteful alternative, or not so much the alternative, but the distasteful face of Aboriginal communities essentially destroying themselves. And yes, we do look at the alcohol problem, and I guess to most of us, we do blame the alcohol. But I take what David said there on board. The alcohol is merely the end result, the symptom. It's not the trauma. And yes, I take on what every white Australian says when Dave says, well, you know, there's 223 years of trauma we've got to work our way through. Well, yes. And there is an argument that we do have to get over it. Now, getting over it and how to get over it are two different things. These healings will be able to be used, I would have thought, for us to get through much of that process. But to heal the black and white sides of Australia, there needs to be a willingness on both sides to heal and come together. Now, has David found the way to do that? I hope so. He may have found a way. It may not be that way. He may have found a way. There might be many ways to achieve this in your community. Do you have a community leader who can step up and do this? Are they part of My Place? Because it sounds like My Place is going to play, and Darren always had this in mind, that my place was going to play a big role in bringing together our indigenous and our white Australians. And you'd be amazed how little ground there is between us when we get together and have a yarn. And unfortunately, David's obviously having connection problems, hasn't been able to join back up yet. But in conversations I've had with Arnie Glenda and others, a yarning circle is required. Now, if you're like me, you probably didn't know what the hell a yarning circle was to begin with. But it's not hard to figure out. You sit down, you have a yarn. Generally, you do this in a circle around a campfire, and you bring all the elders together and bring as many of the clans together as you can, and everybody has a say, and it's a very civilized conversation. Now, maybe that's what needs to happen. And then one of the questions I was hoping to get to ask Limper, but clearly not going to be able to get to if he can't log back on, is how do we unify the Black nation and the white nation? How do we get consensus out of the Black nation? There are a lot of self-interested people who are in powerful positions in clans. They are being fed government money, and to keep the government money coming, they have to do what the man says. We have to learn how to combat that. There are significant things, but there are ways, means, and I'm sure plans to do just that. And exposing great levels of the corruption that are involved in the Territory and Western Australia and South Australia and parts of Queensland as it relates to our Aboriginal communities. There are some horror stories coming out of there. David didn't get an opportunity to tell you tonight about what's happening on Tiwi Island. They've been offering folks up there $500 a jab, kids too. There are people up there who've had as many as 6 jabs and they're falling over like flies, is what he's being told. So they are murdering us. They are murdering all of us. It doesn't matter what color we are, what creed we are, what religion we are. It doesn't matter. They are killing the sickest of us or the weakest of us, the ones whose immune systems will go down first. That is what they're doing. We need to figure out a way to unify this country, and we need to figure it out fast, because these bastards, come the end of this year when they put up this referendum, if this yes vote gets up, it's all gone, folks. Everything. The Aboriginals in this country will become corporatized. And as Limper was saying in our chat, the sovereigns, are the only ones, the easiest, safest, lawful way of us regaining control of our country. And those sovereigns are, for absence of any other argument about New Zealand, about New Guinea pygmies, they are recognised as sovereigns on this land. So we can have as many arguments amongst ourselves, but it won't really matter, because the only argument that matters has already been had, and that is how they are referred to, sovereigns of this land. A yes vote will change that. It will remove sovereignty from the nation, from our Aboriginal nations people. Wouldn't it be ironic if it took consensus, love, forethought, planning from the Black side of Australia to save the white side? What more of a gesture could we need? Because that is selfless. That is community. That is building us. That is working for all of us, regardless of shape, colour, creed. Wouldn't it be ironic if the Black nation came together to save the whole of this country through sovereignty? And I did see a mention there, somebody about Magna Carta 1215. Yes, I would have had a bit of a conversation about that, and I will have a conversation. We haven't spoken about it privately yet, and I don't want to throw it at him cold, so to speak, because some folks have never even heard of Magna Carta 1215. Doesn't matter whether they're white, black, yellow, blue, or purple. Some folks just never heard of it, so we could have wound up going back into a lesson. Just speaking of Magna Carta 1215, and further to what I said the other night, I've been contacted by somebody who's keeping in touch with Fitz, at least through the Soundbite University channel that he runs, and he's doing his own shows at the moment. It's great. I'm glad he's doing that. Apparently, he's going to be coming up to Brisbane the next week or so. So things must have changed in his life, because I couldn't get him to come out of home, and he doesn't like flying. So wherever we were going to get him, he had to be driven. So hopefully things have changed, and I plan to try and catch up with him if he is coming to Brisbane. He might just be beaming in if that's the case. Probably a bit difficult for me to catch up with him, but I might just turn up at an event he's going to be speaking at on the 23rd up here. If you want details of that, let me know. carl@vofhq.com would be a great help. So I'd have to say we've certainly lost Dave for tonight. I will have him back on the show. We have a lot more to talk about. He's probably got to go and finish cleaning up before the sun goes down, or hopefully a croc didn't get him, because quite seriously, folks, he's standing on one of those beaches where they, 4.5 metre crocs do come in on a fairly regular basis. All part of living and learning on country, I dare say, and something we can all go and experience. Langarama, it's called, and if you are interested in exploring either the big trip that he was talking about, starting in Darwin and going 650 odd k's out into country, and going to some parts of the country that have never been seen by tribal people, let alone white people. So this will be a first. This will be a very significant first. If it's something you think you might enjoy, learning to get in touch with the Australian Aboriginal culture, learning history, learning about country, I urge you to email me, carl@vofhq.com. I will make sure that David gets all of your emails and information requests. And who knows, you might see me on that trip too. They do shorter versions, as you said. There's one coming up next weekend, I think, and one in May. So if you didn't want to go away for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it turns out to be, you only want to go away for a weekend, you can immerse yourself in culture and get some knowledge of it. I couldn't recommend it to you highly enough. There is a lot of video evidence available about what's going on in our Aboriginal communities at the moment. David has supplied me some of it, and I will, I've got to alter it a little bit before I can put it on. So I'll need to sit down over the weekend and probably do some editing there. But there are certain things that I do want to show you from that, and we'll aim to get David back on again next week, and we will speak more about this if his time is able. I'd really like to see if we can get some funding going back for Ballinu, folks. It sounds like about the most important thing to keep Aboriginal kids out of prison in the Northern Territory, and 850 kids over 17 years. Well, that's a brilliant effort, but we need to scale that up a bit. Do you think maybe 850 kids a year? Don't know that that's possible, but we need to scale it up. We need to make sure that David gets funding, and he's been wise enough, smart enough, and he's a very savvy man. Does his own research. He was savvy enough to pick up what was going on with the UN, and he turned his back. They were offering money, multiple hundreds of millions of dollars, I would imagine, and he's turned his back on that because he knows what is required if you're going to take that sort of money. He's not that kind of bloke, and I stand corrected. And as I did earlier, I apologise for any inference I gave earlier. He is a man who is desperate to try and find a solution for his people, our kids. All right. There are millions of stories that he could tell us about what he's seeing on country with families, with people, and he has certain solutions to offer up. I want to hear what those certain solutions are, and I hope to think that you guys do too. That would be, I think, beneficial for us all to get a good idea on all of that. Let me have a bit of a glance down, see if there's anything here I can pick up quickly. Yeah, that's a very good point, J1. They are probably the only people who've ever experienced true freedom, and the ones that are living on land is doubly so. Barbara's got the right idea. Alcohol is a destroyer of most relationships. Doesn't matter what color you are. Alcohol has a detrimental effect. We all process it differently, and and some of us process it a lot worse than others, unfortunately. Yeah, Sunflower, God love you. Thank you for your continued donation. Yeah, we do need to get rid of these people, or we just need to make them understand that they can't keep raping the country without giving back to it. Now, I've been told from people who know her and Clive Palmer too, if I'm honest, that they are very benevolent people. They are very keen to help, very keen to do the right thing, and they are not looking for any kind of acknowledgement out of it. They would fund these things quietly and expect nobody to talk about. In fact, almost demand that nobody talks about where the funding came from. Be very happy to do that deal, folks. If we can get some money to get that sort of level of education and that sort of success rate coming out from the courses that David Cole is running, then we as a nation can't afford not to do that. You know, 2 suicides out of 850 in 17 years. And apparently a recidivist rate in very, very low single figures. That meaning that any kid who was put through that course through the justice system has not appeared or reappeared in front of the justice system after having gone through it. They've been given skills. They've been given tools to cope, to learn, to grow, and not to, I guess, reach for the pipe or reach for the bottle to try and numb the pain. Can't say I've got any answers, folks, but I want to say I want to find them. Can only find them through you. Can only find them through you and people like David Cole, who are willing to stand up, willing to work their asses off for all of us, colour be damned. And for those of us who would be divisionist, those of us who resent, as David said, oh, the Aboriginals have got so much, get over it, move on. We can't continue harping backwards. If you are going to demand that the Aborigines stop talking about having their land stolen from them 223 years ago, then you also have to stop bitching and moaning about the outdated stereotypes that, well, maybe not stereotypes, because it was reality in a lot of cases, particularly through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and it's probably still that same reality now. It's just that we don't see it unless we're actually living in the streets where it's happening. And I'm really hopeful that, you know, that doesn't. Well, I'm hopeful that we can break that cycle. It looks like David's found himself back into a place where he can connect again. You're back. Oh, you made it inside. Good deal. I thought.
Hey, sorry, brother. I thought I'd go down the beach and show you the beautiful scenery, and my phone wasn't fully charged.
Oh, well, that's all right. As long as the croc didn't get you, I'm happy about that.
That's right. Yeah.
I've just been saying that it's important. We need to try and get you funded. We need courses like yours, and we need to upscale them, because while 850 through over 17 years is fantastic, we probably need to put 850 a year through, don't we?
100%, brother, and that's all kids. The reality is, tribal groups across the country were crying for my program over the last 20 years, but government's never funded us sufficiently enough to do it properly here, let alone spread it out around the country. Would you like me to follow up on the Alice Springs stuff that I cut out on?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so the situation there has been like that for a long time. We've had a lot of kids on the street for a long time. A lot of the kids on the street tend to be from families coming in, coming in from remote communities. The town camps become overcrowded. People are coming in and oh man, I've done it to you again.
No, it's all good. I'm still seeing you.
Oh, can you? My bad.
Yeah, you're all good. Oh, well, we were. Maybe you've just died. I think you might have. There you go. So maybe the generator stopped. I don't know. I'll give him a couple of minutes to see whether or not he can get back on. Otherwise, I won't hold you up. We've been going for an hour or so tonight, folks. We will talk further with David, and I'll get all those details from him. If you are keen on going on Langorama, or you are keen on going to learn more about our cultural touch to this country. And we should have that. If we're going to call ourselves indigenous, if you were born here and you want to be called indigenous, then you might want to learn a bit about the country. I've learnt more watching half a dozen videos from Lumpa today about natural medicines, natural healing, tribal law, what is important in remote communities, and I'm learning slowly about the violence. It's very difficult. I find it very difficult to deal with the violence against children, and I have a very unforgiving nature for that sort of thing. So I am struggling with the concept of helping someone who would abuse a child like that. I mean, I know where I'd like to help them, probably into the jaws of a crocodile. So I'm hopeful that David can teach me ways to deal with my torment over that. And I'm not the only one who feels this way, I know. But let's face it, none of us are going to go and throw people to crocodiles, are we? Quite happy to stand up and do that if it's allowed. But otherwise, I think it'll be, we'll be taking turns at the gallows, pulling the floor switch. I'll leave it for tonight. We'll let David go and plug his phone in and get a bit of signal happening again. I'll get him back on next week. Thank you tonight, folks, for joining us. We didn't get through nearly as much as I'd hoped, but we would never get through as much as I'd hope on a subject like this. There is too much to cover in one night, and I want to try and set something up with David so that he comes on pretty regularly and gives us an idea and an update of what's going on in the territory and across Australia. As we inexorably get towards this bloody referendum towards the end of the year. No, folks, no. It's the only vote, no. And we will keep trying to educate you as best we can. We will get not just David, but other members of communities across the country to come on and have a talk, and we will get their true stories. This is the voice. It's not a white or a black voice. It's everybody's voice, and we want everybody to be heard or have the opportunity to be heard, provided you're not a troll. Trolls, you can be heard. Go to your own room and be heard. We don't really care. Samantha, gee, I like what you're saying there. We need to disconnect from the rest of the world for a while. The world is broken. There's an evil that is going on that isn't for us to be around. Yes, you are 100% on the money there. Absolutely. Wow. You wouldn't know what brands, would you? Asking for a friend. And I am, because not me. That ain't my world. Yes, Russ, that is a very good, very, very good observation. Alcohol directly damages the pineal gland. And why is the pineal gland so important to us, folks? If you're not aware of that yet, you need to do a bit of research, okay? But at the moment, your pineal gland's probably just about as hard and as dry as a walnut. It needs to be softened up and given a bit of juice, come back to life. You'll be amazed what you can see through it. And there are ways and means through diet to do that. Oh, diet. There's one we haven't talked about. Let me touch on that quickly before we go. Coles and Woolworths meat, all bought through New South Wales. Every cow, every sheep, everything that goes to a sale yard in New South Wales is given an mRNA vaccine. Everything that goes to a sale yard in New South Wales, and all meat for Coles and Woolies Australia-wide is bought through New South Wales abattoirs. Go and get another butcher. Go and get your local butcher. Go and ask him where he gets his meat from. Go and ask if they're locals who provide it. Go and see whether those locals are allowing anybody go and jab their meat with experimental vaccines, because that's what they're doing with our animals. Bastards. God, I can't wait for the time we get to pay. Maybe we'll be able to put them all on a road somewhere and just call them the dickheads, and that'll be the day we'll be able to drive over them with a dozer blade.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's roll!